Buddha an anthology of Dhamma, revealing the hidden. Volume 9, Dhamma Primer. Why every Buddhist must study only the Tathagata's words. Words which should be studied, learned, and interrogated in the foremost assembly. Here, in this kind of assembly, when those discourses are being recited that are mere poetry composed by poets, beautiful in words and phrases, created by outsiders, spoken by disciples, the bhikkhus do not want to listen to them, do not lend an ear to them, or apply their minds to understand them. They do not think those teachings should be studied and learned. But when those discourses spoken by the Tathagata are being recited that are deep in meaning, world-transcending, connected with emptiness, the bhikkhus want to listen to them, lend an ear to them, and apply their minds to understand them. They think those teachings should be studied and learned. And having learned those teachings, they interrogate each other about them and examine them thoroughly, asking, "How is this? What is the meaning of this?" They disclose to others what is obscure and elucidate what is unclear, and dispel their perplexity about numerous perplexing points. This is called the assembly trained in interrogation, not in vain talk. Words that should be studied and mastered. Simile of the drum peg. Bhikkhus. Once in the past, the Dasaras had a kettle drum called the summoner. When the summoner became cracked, the Dasaras inserted another peg. Eventually, the time came when the summoner's original drumhead had disappeared and only a collection of pegs remained. So too, bhikkhus, the same thing will happen with the bhikkhus in the future. When those discourses spoken by the Tathagata that are deep in meaning, super mundane, dealing with emptiness, are being recited, they will not be eager to listen to them, nor lend an ear to them, nor apply their minds to understand them, and they will not think those teachings should be studied and mastered. But when those discourses that are mere poetry composed by poets, beautiful in words and phrases, created by outsiders, spoken by their disciples, are being recited, they will be eager to listen to them, will lend an ear to them, will apply their minds to understand them, and they will think those teachings should be studied and mastered. In this way, bhikkhus, those discourses spoken by the Tathagata that are deep in meaning, super mundane, dealing with emptiness, will disappear. Words from singleness of mind. Agivisana, the Tathagata teaches the Dhamma to others only to give them knowledge. When the talk is finished, Agivisana, then I steady my mind internally, quieten it, bring it to singleness, and concentrate it on that same sign of concentration as before, in which I constantly abide. Words that are just so, not otherwise. From the night he fully awakened, monks, until the night he attains final nibbana. In this interval, whatever he speaks, talks of, and expounds, all that is just so, not otherwise. Words of immediately effective Dhamma. Good bhikkhus, so you have been guided by me with this Dhamma, which is visible here and now, immediately effective, inviting inspection, onward leading, to be experienced by the wise for themselves. Words of Dhamma and discipline. Words to be dwelled with as one's own island, as one's own refuge. Ananda. It may be that you will think, the teacher's instruction has ceased. Now we have no teacher. It should not be seen like this, Ananda, for what I have taught and explained to you as Dhamma and discipline will, at my passing, be your teacher. Those bhikkhus, Ananda, either now or after I am gone, who dwell with themselves as their own island, with themselves as their own refuge, with no other refuge, who will dwell with the Dhamma as their island? Will the Dhamma as their refuge, with no other refuge? It is these bhikkhus, Ananda, who will be for me topmost of those keen on the training. Words to be undertook as decreed, not to be abolished. As long as the bhikkhus do not decree anything that has not been decreed or abolish anything that has already been decreed, but undertake and follow the training rules as they have been decreed, only growth is to be expected for them, not decline. The Noble Eightfold Path is the good practice instituted by Tatha. Ananda, I instituted that good practice, which leads to complete disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. And what is that good practice? It is this Noble Eightfold Path, that is, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Ananda, I say to you, continue this good practice instituted by me, and do not be the last man. Ananda, when there are two men living, he under whom there occurs a breach of this good practice, he is the last man among them. Therefore, Ananda, I say to you, continue this good practice instituted by me, and do not be the last man. The story of the Buddha's last days. The Buddha's last days. Sariputta, there are certain recluses and Brahmins whose doctrine and view is this: as long as this good man is still young, a black-haired young man endowed with the blessing of youth in the prime of life, so long is he perfect in his lucid wisdom. But when this good man is old, aged, burdened with years, advanced in life, and come to the last stage, being 80, 90, or 100 years old, then the lucidity of his wisdom is lost. But it should not be regarded so. I am now old, aged, burdened with years, advanced in life, and come to the last stage of my years, have turned 80. Now suppose that I had 4 disciples with 100 years lifespan, perfect in mindfulness, retentiveness, memory, and lucidity of wisdom. Just as a skilled archer, trained, practiced, and tested, could easily shoot a light arrow across the shadow of a palm tree. Suppose that they were even to that extent perfect in mindfulness, retentiveness, memory, and lucidity of wisdom. Suppose that they continuously asked me about the four foundations of mindfulness, and that I answered them when asked, and that they remembered each answer of mine, and never asked a subsidiary question or paused except to eat, drink, consume food, taste, urinate, defecate, and rest in order to remove sleepiness and tiredness. Still, the Tathagata's exposition of the Dhamma, his explanations of factors of the Dhamma, and his replies to questions would not yet come to an end. But meanwhile, those four disciples of mine, with their 100 years lifespan, would have died at the end of those 100 years. Sariputta, even if you have to carry me about on a bed, still there will be no change in the lucidity of the Tathagata's wisdom. Rightly speaking, were it to be said of anyone, a being not subject to delusion has appeared in the world for the welfare and happiness of many. Out of compassion for the world, for the good, welfare, and happiness of gods and humans, it is of me, indeed, that rightly speaking, this should be said. Then the Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One. Having approached and paid homage, while massaging the Blessed One's limbs, he said to him, "It is wonderful, Venerable Sir. It is amazing, Venerable Sir. The Blessed One's complexion is no longer pure and bright. His limbs are all flaccid and wrinkled. His body is stooped, and some alteration is seen in his faculties, in the eye faculty, the ear faculty, the nose faculty, the tongue faculty, the body faculty. So it is, Ananda. In youth one is subject to aging. In health one is subject to illness. While alive one is subject to death. The complexion is no longer pure and bright. The limbs are all flaccid and wrinkled. The body is stooped, and some alteration is seen in the faculties, in the eye faculty, the ear faculty, the nose faculty, the tongue faculty, the body faculty." This is what the Blessed One said. Having said this, the Fortunate One, the teacher, further said this: "Fie on you, wretched aging, aging which makes beauty fade. So much has the charming puppet been crushed beneath advancing age. One who might live 100 years also has death as destruction. Death spares none along the way, but comes crushing everything." And now again, Ananda, the Tathagata has today at Chapala's shrine consciously and deliberately rejected the rest of his allotted term of life. And when he had thus spoken, the Venerable Ananda addressed the Exalted One and said, "Vouchsafe, Lord, to remain during the eon, live on through the kalpa, O Exalted One, for the good and the happiness of the great multitudes, out of pity for the world, for the good and the gain and the weal of gods and men." "Enough now, Ananda. Beseech not the Tathagata," was the reply. "The time for making such requests is past." And again, the second time and the third time, the Venerable Ananda besought the Exalted One in the same words, and he received from the Exalted One the same reply. In that when a suggestion so evident and a hint so clear were thus given to thee by the Tathagata, thou wast yet incapable of comprehending them. If thou shouldst then have so besought the Tathagata might have rejected the appeal even to the second time, but the third time he would have granted it. Thine, therefore, O Ananda, is the fault, thine is the offense. But now, Ananda, have I not formally declared to you that it is in the very nature of all things, near and dear unto us, that we must divide ourselves from them, leave them, sever ourselves from them? How, then, Ananda, can this be possible, whereas anything, whatever born, brought into being, and organized, contains within itself the inherent necessity of dissolution? How then can this be possible, that such a being should not be dissolved? No such condition can exist. All component things must grow old. Work out your salvation with diligence. The final extinction of the Tathagata will take place before long. At the end of 3 months from this time, the Tathagata will die. My age is now full ripe. My life draws to its close. I leave you. I depart, relying on myself alone. Be earnest then, O brethren, holy, full of thought. Be steadfast in resolve. Keep watch over your own hearts. Who wearies not, but holds fast to this truth and law, shall cross the sea of life, shall make an end of grief. Dwell with Dhamma as your refuge. But have I not already declared, Ananda, that we must be parted, separated, and severed from all those who are dear and agreeable to us? How, Ananda, is it to be obtained here? May what is born come to be, conditioned, and subject to disintegration, not disintegrate. That is impossible. Therefore, Ananda, dwell with yourselves as your own island, with yourselves as your own refuge. With no other refuge, dwell with the Dhamma as your island, with the Dhamma as your refuge, with no other refuge. And how, Ananda, does a bhikkhu dwell with himself as his own island, with himself as his own refuge, with no other refuge, with the Dhamma as his island, with the Dhamma as his refuge, with no other refuge? Here, Ananda, a bhikkhu dwells contemplating the body in the body. He dwells contemplating feelings in feelings. He dwells contemplating mind in mind. He dwells contemplating phenomena in phenomena, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. Those bhikkhus, Ananda, either now or after I am gone, who dwell with themselves as their own island, with themselves as their own refuge, with no other refuge, who dwell with the Dhamma as their island, with the Dhamma as their refuge, with no other refuge. It is these bhikkhus, Ananda, who will be for me topmost of those keen on the training. Four criteria that assuredly the word of the Buddha. Suppose a monk were to say, "Friends, I heard and received this from the Lord's own lips. This is the Dhamma. This is the discipline. This is the Master's teaching. Then, monks, you should neither approve nor disapprove his words. Then, without approving or disapproving his words and expressions, should be carefully noted and compared with the suttas and reviewed in the light of the discipline. If they, on such comparison and review, are found not to conform to the suttas or the discipline, the conclusion must be, assuredly this is not the word of the Buddha. It has been wrongly understood by this monk, and the matter is to be rejected. But where on such comparison and review they are found to conform to the suttas or the discipline, the conclusion must be, assuredly, this is the word of the Buddha. It has been rightly understood by this monk. Suppose a monk were to say, in such and such a place there is a community with elders and distinguished teachers. I have heard and received this from that community. Then, monks, you should neither approve nor disapprove his words. Suppose a monk were to say, in such and such a place there are many elders who are learned, bearers of the tradition, who know the Dhamma, the discipline, the code of rules. Suppose a monk were to say, in such and such a place there is one elder who is learned. I have heard and received this from that elder. But where on such comparison and review they are found to conform to the suttas and the discipline, then the conclusion must be, assuredly, this is the word of the Buddha. It has been rightly understood by this monk. The Supreme Homage. Ananda, prepare me a bed between these twin salt trees, with my head to the north. I am tired and want to lie down. Ananda, these salt trees have burst forth into an abundance of untimely blossoms, which fell upon the Tathagata's body, sprinkling it and covering it in homage. Divine coral tree flowers fell from the sky. Divine sandalwood powder fell from the sky, sprinkling and covering the Tathagata's body in homage. Divine music and song sound from the sky in homage to the Tathagata. Never before has the Tathagata been so honored, revered, esteemed, worshipped, and adored. And yet, Ananda, whatever monk, nun, male or female, lay follower dwells, practicing the Dhamma properly, and perfectly fulfills the Dhamma way, he or she honors the Tathagata, reveres and esteems him, and pays him the supreme homage. Therefore, Ananda, we will dwell practicing the Dhamma properly and perfectly fulfill the Dhamma way. This must be your watchword. Dhamma and discipline will be your teacher. Ananda, it may be that you will think, the teacher's instruction has ceased. Now we have no teacher. It should not be seen like this, Ananda, for what I have taught and explained to you as Dhamma and discipline will at my passing be your teacher. Now, monks, I declare to you, all conditioned things are of a nature to decay. Strive on untiringly. These were the Tathagata's last words. 4 places the sight of which should arouse emotion in the faithful. Lord, formerly monks who had spent the rains in various places used to come to see the Tathagata, and we used to welcome them so that such well-trained monks might see you and pay their respects. But with the Lord's passing, we shall no longer have a chance to do this. Ananda, there are 4 places the sight of which should arouse emotion in the faithful. Which are they? Here the Tathagata was born is the first. Here the Tathagata attained supreme enlightenment is the second. Here the Tathagata set in motion The wheel of Dhamma is the third. Here, the Tathagata attain Nibbana, element, without remainder, is the fourth. In Ananda, the faithful monks and nuns, male and female lay followers, will visit those places, and any who die while making the pilgrimage to these shrines with a devout heart will, at the breaking up of the body after death, be reborn in a heavenly world. 3 places that should be remembered. Bhikkhus. There are these 3 places that a head anointed Khattiya king should be remembered all his life. What 3? 1. The first is the place where he was born. 2. The second is the place where he was head anointed a Khattiya king. 3. And the third is the place where, having triumphed in battle, he emerged victorious and settled at the head of the battlefield. These are the 3 places that a head anointed Khattiya king should be remembered all his life. Nibbana and the end of dukkha. Birth is the origin of suffering. Bhikkhus. The conception of an embryo in a womb takes place through the union of 3 things. Here, there is a union of the mother and father, but it is not the mother's season, and the being to be reborn is not present. In this case, there is no conception of an embryo in the womb. Here, there is a union of the mother and father, and it is the mother's season, but the being to be reborn is not present. In this case, too, there is no conception of an embryo in a womb. But when there is a union of a mother and father, and it is the mother's season, and the being to be reborn is present, through the union of these 3 things, the conception of an embryo in a womb takes place. The mother then carries the embryo in her womb for 9 or 10 months with much anxiety, as a heavy burden. Then, at the end of 9 or 10 months, the mother gives birth with much anxiety, as a heavy burden. Then, when the child is born, she nourishes it with her own blood, for her mother's breast milk is called blood in the noble one's discipline. When he grows up and his faculties mature, the child plays at such games as toy plows, tip-cat, somersaults, toy windmills, toy measures, toy cars, and a toy bow and arrow. When he grows up and his faculties mature still further, the youth enjoys himself provided and endowed with the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. With forms cognizable by the eye, sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, flavors cognizable by the tongue, tangibles cognizable by the body that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and likable, connected with sensual desire, and provocative of lust. On seeing a form with the eye, he lusts after it if it is pleasing. He dislikes it if it is unpleasing. He abides with mindfulness of the body unestablished, with a limited mind, and he does not understand it as it actually is, the deliverance of mind and deliverance by wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. Engaged, as he is in favoring and opposing whatever feeling he feels, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, he delights in that feeling, welcomes it, and remains holding to it. As he does so, delight arises in him. Now delight in feelings is clinging. With as clinging as condition, being comes to be. With being as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. Suffering is dependently arisen. Good, good, Ananda. Anyone answering rightly would answer just as Sariputta has done. I have said, Ananda, that suffering is dependently arisen. Dependent on what? Dependent on contact. If one were to speak thus, one would be stating what has been said by me and would not misrepresent me with what is contrary to fact. One would explain in accordance with the Dhamma, and no reasonable consequences of one's assertion would give ground for criticism. Therein, Ananda, in the case of those ascetics and Brahmins, proponents of Kama, who maintain that suffering is created by oneself, that is conditioned by contact. Also, in the case of those ascetics and Brahmins, proponents of Kama, who maintain that suffering is created by another, that too is conditioned by contact. Also, in the case of those ascetics and Brahmins, proponents of Kama, who maintain that suffering is created both by oneself and by another, that too is conditioned by contact. With the destruction of Kama comes the destruction of suffering. Bhikkhus, develop the path and the way that leads to the destruction of craving. And what is the path and the way that leads to the destruction of craving? It is the 7 factors of enlightenment. What 7? The enlightenment factor of mindfulness, the enlightenment factor of discrimination of states, the enlightenment factor of energy, the enlightenment factor of rapture, the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, the enlightenment factor of equanimity. When this was said, the Venerable Uday asked the Blessed One, Venerable Sir, how are the 7 factors of enlightenment developed and cultivated so that they lead to the destruction of craving? Here, Uday, a bhikkhu develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, which is based upon seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, maturing in release, which is vast, exalted, measureless, without ill will. When he develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, which is based upon seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, maturing in release, which is vast, exalted, measureless, without ill will, craving is abandoned. With the abandoning of craving, Kama is abandoned. With the abandoning of Kama, suffering is abandoned. He develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity, which is based upon seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, maturing in release, which is vast, exalted, measureless, without ill will. When he develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity, which is based upon seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, maturing in release, which is vast, exalted, measureless, without ill will, craving is abandoned. With the abandoning of craving, Kama is abandoned. With the abandoning of Kama, suffering is abandoned. Thus, Uday, with the destruction of craving comes the destruction of kama. With the destruction of kama comes the destruction of suffering. The destruction of delight.
สัมมาปัสสังนิพพินทติ
Seeing rightly, he experiences revulsion.
นันทิขยาราคะขโย
With the destruction of delight comes destruction of lust.
ราคะขยานันทิขโย
With the destruction of lust comes destruction of delight.
นันทิราคะขยาจิตตังสุวิมุตตันติวุจจติ
With the destruction of delight and lust, the mind is said to be well liberated. The destruction of craving is nibbana. Venerable Sir, it is said, a being. In what way, Venerable Sir, is one called a being? One is stuck, Radha, tightly stuck, in desire, lust, delight, and craving for form. Therefore, one is called a being. One is stuck, tightly stuck, in desire, lust, delight, and craving for feeling. Therefore, one is called a being. One is stuck, tightly stuck, in desire, lust, delight, and craving for perception. Therefore, one is called a being. One is stuck, tightly stuck, in desire, lust, delight, and craving for volitional formations. Therefore, one is called a being. One is stuck, tightly stuck, in desire, lust, delight, and craving for consciousness. Therefore, one is called a being. Suppose, Radha, some little boys or girls are playing with sand castles. So long as they are not devoid of lust, desire, affection, thirst, passion, and craving for those sand castles, they cherish them, play with them, treasure them, and treat them possessively. But when those little boys or girls lose their lust, desire, affection, thirst, passion, and craving for those sandcastles, then they scatter them with their hands and feet, demolish them, shatter them, and put them out of play. So too, Radha, scatter form, demolish it, shatter it, put it out of play. Practice for the destruction of craving. Scatter feeling, scatter perception, scatter volitional formations, scatter consciousness, demolish it, shatter it, put it out of play. Practice for the destruction of craving. For the destruction of craving, Radha, is nibbana. Delight is the origin of suffering. As a consequence of this, delight arises. Delight in consciousness is clinging. With one's clinging as condition, existence comes to be. With existence as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. A stream enterer is worth more than being a wheel-turning monarch. Bhikkhus, although a wheel-turning monarch, having exercised supreme sovereign rulership over the 4 continents, with the breakup of the body, after death, is reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world, in the company of the devas of the Tatha realm, and there in the Nandana grove, accompanied by a retinue of celestial nymphs. He enjoys himself supplied and endowed with the 5 chords of celestial sensual pleasure. Still, as he does not possess 4 things, he is not freed from hell, the animal realm, and the domain of ghosts, not freed from the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the netherworld. Although bhikkhus, a noble disciple maintains himself by lumps of alms food and wears rag robes, still, as he possesses 4 things, he is freed from hell, the animal realm, and the domain of ghosts, freed from the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the netherworld. What are the 4? Here, bhikkhus, the noble disciple possesses confirmed confidence in the Buddha thus. The Blessed One is an arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, fortunate, knower of the world, unsurpassed leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans, the enlightened one, the Blessed One. He possesses confirmed confidence in the Dhamma thus. The Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, applicable to be personally experienced by the wise. He possesses confirmed confidence in the Sangha thus. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is practicing the good way, practicing the straight way, practicing the true way, practicing the proper way. That is, the 4 pairs of persons, the 8 types of individuals. This Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, the unsurpassed field of merit for the world. He possesses the virtues dear to the Noble One's unbroken, untorn, unblemished, unmottled, freeing, praised by the wise, ungrasped, leading to concentration. He possesses these 4 things, and bhikkhus, between the obtaining of sovereignty over the 4 continents and the obtaining of the 4 things, the obtaining of sovereignty over the 4 continents is not worth a 16th part of the obtaining of the 4 things. Faith follower. Bhikkhus, the eye is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. The ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. One who places faith in these teachings and resolves on them thus is called a faith follower. One who has entered the fixed course of rightness, entered the plane of superior persons, transcended the plane of the worldlings. He is incapable of doing any deed by reason of which he might be reborn in hell, in the animal realm, or in the domain of ghosts. He is incapable of passing away without having realized the fruit of stream entry. A Dhamma follower. One for whom these teachings are accepted thus, after being pondered to a sufficient degree, with wisdom is called a Dhamma follower. One who has entered the fixed course of rightness, entered the plane of superior persons, transcended the plane of the worldlings. He is incapable of doing any deed by reason of which he might be reborn in hell, in the animal realm, or in the domain of ghosts. He is incapable of passing away without having realized the fruit of stream entry. 6 cases of incapability by one accomplished in view. Bhikkhus, there are these 6 cases of incapability. What 6? The accomplished in view is 1. Incapable of depriving his mother of life. 2. Incapable of depriving his father of life. 3. Incapable of depriving an arahant of life. 4. Incapable of shedding the Tathagata's blood with a mind of hatred. 5. Incapable of creating a schism in the Sangha. 6. Incapable of acknowledging another teacher. These are the 6 cases of incapability. Gradual progress to final knowledge. Bhikkhus, I do not say that final knowledge is achieved all at once. On the contrary, final knowledge is achieved by gradual training, by gradual practice, by gradual progress. And how does there come to be gradual training, gradual practice, gradual progress? Here, one who has faith in a teacher visits him. When he visits him, he pays respect to him. When he pays respect to him, he gives ear. One who gives ear hears the Dhamma. Having heard the Dhamma, he memorizes it. He examines the meaning of the teachings he has memorized. When he examines their meaning, he gains a reflective acceptance of those teachings. When he has gained a reflective acceptance of those teachings, zeal springs up in him. When zeal sprung up, he applies his will. Having applied his will, he scrutinizes. Having scrutinized, he strives. Resolutely striving, he realizes with the body the ultimate truth and sees it by penetrating it with wisdom. The Noble Eightfold Path. And what, monks, is the noble truth of the way of practice leading to the cessation of suffering? It is just this Noble Eightfold Path, namely, right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the knowledge of suffering, the knowledge of the origin of suffering, the knowledge of the cessation of suffering, and the knowledge of the way of practice leading to the cessation of suffering. This is called right view. And what, monks, is right thought? The thought of renunciation, the thought of non-ill will, the thought of harmlessness. This, monks, is called right thought. And what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech. And what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. And what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the Aryan disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood. And what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort. And what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk abides contemplating body as body, ardent, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside hankering and fretting for the world. He abides contemplating feelings as feelings, ardent, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside hankering and fretting for the world. He abides contemplating mind as mind, ardent, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside hankering and fretting for the world. He abides contemplating mind objects as mind objects, ardent, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside hankering and fretting for the world. This is called right mindfulness. And what, monks, is right concentration? Here, a monk detached from sense desires, detached from unwholesome mental states, enters and remains in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering, born of detachment, filled with delight and joy. And with the subsiding of thinking and pondering, by gaining inner tranquility and oneness of mind, he enters and remains in the second jhana, which is without thinking and pondering, born of concentration, filled with delight and joy, and with the fading away of delight, remaining imperturbable, mindful, and clearly aware, he experiences in himself the joy of which the noble ones say, "Happy is he who dwells with equanimity and mindfulness." He enters the third jhana, and having given up pleasure and pain, and with the disappearance of former gladness and sadness, he enters and remains in the fourth jhana, which is beyond pleasure and pain, and purified by equanimity and mindfulness. This is called right concentration. And that, monks, is called the way of practice leading to the cessation of suffering. Where earth, water, fire, and air find no footing. Once, Kivacha, in this order of monks, the thought occurred to a certain monk, I wonder where the four great elements, the earth element, the water element, the fire element, the air element, cease without remainder. And that monk attained to such a state of mental concentration that the way to the Deva realms appeared before him. And that monk attained to such a state of mental concentration that the way to the Deva realms appeared before him. He went to the realm of the Devas, of the four great kings, and asked the question. When none of them could answer the question, the monk went to the 33 gods, who said, We don't know, but Sakka, Lord of the gods, may know. Sakka told the monk to ask the Yama Devas, the Sayama, the Tusita Devas, the Santusita, Nimanarati, Sunamita, Paranamita, Vasavati Devas, Vasavati, Pramas, retinue, and all the way to the great Brahma. The great Brahma avoided to answer and finally said that the Devas believe there is nothing Brahma does not know But the truth is, he does not know where the four great elements cease without remainder. It is the monk's fault that he did not ask the Blessed Lord. In the end, the monk went back to the Blessed One. So that monk, as swiftly as a strong man might flex or unflex his arm, vanished from the Brahma world and appeared in my presence. He prostrated himself before me, then sat down to one side and said, Lord, where do the four great elements, the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the air element cease without remainder? I replied, Monk, once upon a time, seafaring merchants, when they set sail on the ocean, took in their ship a land-sighting bird. When they could not see the land themselves, they released this bird. The bird flew to the east, to the south, to the west, to the north. It flew to the zenith and to the intermediate points of the compass. If it saw land anywhere, it flew there. But if it saw no land, it returned to the ship. In the same way, monk, you have been as far as the Brahma world searching for an answer to your question and not finding it. And now you come back to me. But monk, you should not ask your question in this way. Where do the four great elements, the earth element, the water element, the fire element, the air element, cease without remainder? Instead, this is how the question should have been put. Where do earth, water, fire, and air no footing find? Where are long and short, small and great, fair and foul? Where are name and form, wholly destroyed? And the answer is, where consciousness is slightless, boundless, all luminous, there's where earth, water, fire, and air find no footing. There both long and short, small and great, fair and foul. There, name and form are wholly destroyed. With the cessation of consciousness, this is all destroyed. Where consciousness is signless. Where consciousness is signless, boundless, all luminous, that's where earth, water, fire, and air find no footing. There, both long and short, small and great, fair and foul, there, name and form are wholly destroyed. With cessation of consciousness, this is all destroyed. The conditioned. Bhikkhus, there are these three characteristics that define the conditioned. What three? An arising is seen, a vanishing is seen, and its alteration while it persists is seen. These are the three characteristics that define the conditioned. The unconditioned. Bhikkhus, there are these three characteristics that define the unconditioned. What three? No arising is seen, no vanishing is seen, and no alteration while it persists is seen. These are the three characteristics that define the unconditioned. Seeing non-self with correct wisdom. Bhikkhus, form is impermanent. Feeling is impermanent. Perception is impermanent. Volitional formations are impermanent. Consciousness is impermanent. What is impermanent is suffering. What is suffering is non-self. What is non-self should be seen as it really is with correct wisdom thus: this is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. When one sees this thus, as it really is, with correct wisdom, one holds no more views concerning the past. When one holds no more views concerning the past, one holds no more views concerning the future. When one holds no more views concerning the future, one has no more obstinate grasping. When one has no more obstinate grasping, the mind becomes dispassionate towards form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness, and is liberated from the taints by non-clinging. By being liberated, it is steady. By being steady, it is content. By being content, one is not agitated. Being unagitated, one personally attains nibbana. One understands. Destroyed is birth. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. The nutriment edible food. If bhikkhus, there is no lust for the nutriment edible food, or for the nutriment contact, or for the nutriment mental volition, or for the nutriment consciousness. If there is no delight, if there is no craving, consciousness does not become established there and come to growth. Where consciousness does not become established and come to growth, there is no descent of name and form. Where there is no descent of name and form, there is no growth of volitional formations. Where there is no growth of volitional formations, there is no production of future renewed existence. Where there is no production of future renewed existence, there is no future birth, aging, and death. Where there is no future birth, aging, and death, I say that is without sorrow, anguish, and despair. Suppose, bhikkhus, there was a house or a hall with a peaked roof, with windows on the northern, southern, and eastern sides. When the sun rises and a beam of light enters through a window, where would it become established? On the western wall, Venerable Sir. If there were no western wall, where would it become established? On the earth, Venerable Sir. If there were no earth, where would it become established? On the water, Venerable Sir. If there were no water, where would it become established? It would not become established anywhere, Venerable Sir. So too, bhikkhus, if there is no lust for the nutriment edible food, for the nutriment contact, for the nutriment mental volition, for the nutriment consciousness, consciousness does not become established there and come to growth. Where consciousness does not become established and come to growth, there is no descent of name and form. Where there is no descent of name and form, there is no growth of volitional formations. Where there is no growth of volitional formations, there is no production of future renewed existence. Where there is no production of future renewed existence, there is no future birth, aging, and death. Where there is no future birth, aging, and death, I say that is without sorrow, anguish, and despair. How should the nutriment edible food be seen? And how, bhikkhus, should the nutriment edible food be seen? Suppose a couple, husband and wife, had taken limited provisions and were traveling through a desert. They have with them their only son, dear and beloved. Then, in the middle of the desert, their limited provisions would be used up and exhausted, while the rest of the desert remains to be crossed. The husband and wife would think, our limited provisions have been used up and exhausted, while the rest of this desert remains to be crossed. Let us kill our only son, dear and beloved, and prepare dried and spiced meat. By eating our son's flesh, we can cross the rest of the desert. Let not all three of us perish. Then, bhikkhus, the husband and wife would kill their only son, dear and beloved, prepare dried and roasted meat, and by eating their son's flesh, they would cross the rest of the desert. While they are eating their son's flesh, they would beat their breasts and cry, Where are you, our only son? Where are you, our only son? What do you think, bhikkhus? Would they eat that food for amusement or for enjoyment or for the sake of physical beauty and attractiveness? No, Venerable Sir. Would they eat that food only for the sake of crossing the desert? Yes, Venerable Sir. It is in such a way, bhikkhus, that I say the nutriment edible food should be seen. When the nutriment edible food is fully understood, lust for the 5 chords of sensual pleasure is fully understood. When lust for the 5 chords of sensual pleasure is fully understood, there is no fetter bound by which a noble disciple might come back again to this world. The end of stress.
นติยาอสติอาคติคตินโหติ
There being no yearning, there is no coming or going.
อาคติคติยาอสติจุตูปปาโตนโหติ
There being no coming or going, there is no passing away or arising.
จุตูปปาเตอสติเนวิทะนหุรังนอุพยมันตเร
There being no passing away or arising, there is neither a here, nor a there, nor a between the two.
เอเสวันโตทุกขสะ
This, just this, is the end of stress. The mind has attained to the end of craving. Through the round of many births, I roamed without reward, without rest, seeking the house builder. Painful is birth again and again. House builder, you're seen. You will not build a house again. All your rafters broken, the ridge pole dismantled. Immersed in dismantling, the mind has attained to the end of craving. Monk who perfected in morality. This is our instruction to you. Whatever should be done, bhikkhus, by a compassionate teacher out of compassion for his disciples, desiring their welfare, that I have done for you. These are the feet of trees, bhikkhus. These are empty huts. Meditate, bhikkhus. Do not be negligent, lest you regret it later. This is our instruction to you. Monk who perfected in morality. First aspect. And how, sire, is a monk perfected in morality? Abandoning the taking of life, he dwells refraining from taking life. Without stick or sword, scrupulous, compassionate, trembling for the welfare of all living beings. Thus he is accomplished in morality. Abandoning the taking of what is not given, he dwells refraining from taking what is not given, living purely, accepting what is given, awaiting what is given, without stealing. Thus he is accomplished in morality. Abandoning unchastity, he lives far from it, aloof from the village practice of sex. Thus he is accomplished in morality. Abandoning false speech, he dwells refraining from false speech, a truth speaker, one to be relied on, trustworthy, dependable, not a deceiver of the world. Thus he is accomplished in morality. Abandoning malicious speech, he does not repeat there what he has heard here, to the detriment of those. Thus he is a reconciler of those at variance and an encourager of those at once, rejoicing in peace, loving it, delighting in it, one who speaks up for peace. Thus he is accomplished in morality. Abandoning harsh speech, he refrains from it. He speaks whatever is blameless, pleasing to the ear, agreeable, reaching the heart, urbane, pleasing and attractive to the multitude. Thus he is accomplished in morality. Abandoning idle chatter, he speaks at the right time, what is correct and to the point, of Dhamma and discipline. He is a speaker whose words are to be treasured, seasonable, reasoned, well defined, and connected with the goal. Thus he is accomplished in morality. Monk who perfected in morality, second aspect. He eats once a day and not at night, refraining from eating at improper times. He avoids watching dancing, singing, music, and shows. He abstains from using garlands, perfumes, cosmetics, ornaments, and adornments. He avoids using high or wide beds. He avoids accepting gold and silver. He avoids accepting raw grain or raw flesh. He does not accept women and young girls, male or female slaves, sheep and goats, cocks and pigs, elephants, cattle, horses and mares, fields and plots. He refrains from running errands, from buying and selling, from cheating with false weights and measures, from bribery and corruption, deception and insincerity, from wounding, killing, imprisoning, highway robbery, and taking food by force. Thus he is accomplished in morality. Monk who perfected in morality, third aspect. Whereas, sir, some ascetics and brahmins, feeding on the food of the faithful, are addicted to the destruction of such seeds as are propagated from roots, from stems, from joints, from cuttings, from seeds. A monk refrains from such destruction. Thus he is perfected in morality. Whereas some ascetics and brahmins, feeding on the food of the faithful, remain addicted to the enjoyment of stored up goods such as food, drink, clothing, carriages, beds, perfumes, meat. A monk refrains from such enjoyment. Thus he is perfected in morality. Whereas some ascetics and brahmins remain addicted to attending such as dancing, singing, music, displays, recitations, hand music, cymbals and drums, fairy shows, acrobatic and conjuring tricks, combats of elephants, buffaloes, bulls, goats, rams, cocks, and quail, fighting with staves, boxing, wrestling, sham fights, parades, maneuvers, and military reviews. A monk refrains from attending such displays. Thus he is perfect in morality. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins, feeding on the food of the faithful, make their living by such base arts, such as wrong means of livelihood as palmistry, divining by signs, portents, dreams, body marks, mouse gnawings, fire oblations, oblations from a ladle, of husks, rice powder, rice grains, ghee or oil, from the mouth or of blood, reading the fingertips, house and garden lore, skill in charms, ghost lore, earth house lore, snake lore, poison lore, rat lore, bird lore, crow lore, foretelling in person's lifespan, charms against arrows, knowledge of animal cries. A monk refrains from such base arts and wrong means of livelihood. Thus he is perfected in morality. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins make their living by such base arts as predicting an eclipse of the moon, the sun, a star, that the sun and moon will go on their proper course, will go astray, that a star will go on its proper course, will go astray, that there will be a shower of meteors, a blaze in the sky, an earthquake, thunder, a rising, setting, darkening, brightening of the moon, the sun, the stars, and such will be the outcome of these things. A monk refrains from such base arts and wrong means of livelihood. Thus he is perfected in morality. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins make their living by such base arts as predicting good or bad rainfall, a good or bad harvest, security, danger, disease, health, or accounting, computing, calculating, poetic composition, philosophizing, a monk refrains from such base arts and wrong means of livelihood. Thus he is perfected in morality. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins make their living by such base arts as arranging the giving and taking in marriage, engagements and divorces, declaring the time for savings and spending, bringing good or bad luck, procuring abortions, using spells to bind the tongue, binding the jaw, making the hands jerk, causing deafness, getting answers with a mirror, a girl medium, a diva, worshipping the sun or great Brahma, breathing fire, invoking the goddess of luck. A monk refrains from such base arts and wrong means of livelihood. Thus he is perfected in morality. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins, feeding on the food of the faithful, make their living by such base arts, such wrong means of livelihood as appeasing the devas and redeeming vows to them, making earth house spells, causing virility or impotence, preparing and consecrating building sites, giving ritual rinsings and bathings, making sacrifices, giving emetics, purges, expectorants, and phlegmagogues, giving ear, eye, nose medicine, ointments, and counter ointments, eye surgery, podiatry, using balms to counter the side effects of previous remedies. A monk refrains from such base arts and wrong means of livelihood. Thus, he is perfected in morality. Balance of energy and harmonious living. So too, Sona, if energy is aroused too forcefully, this leads to restlessness. And if energy is too lax, this leads to laziness. Therefore, Sona, resolve on a balance of energy. Achieve evenness of the spiritual faculties, and take up the object there. Yes, Pante. Bhikkhus. Wherever bhikkhus are dwelling in concord, harmoniously, without disputes, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with eyes of affection, I am at ease about going there, let alone about directing my attention there. I conclude, surely those venerable ones have abandoned 3 things and cultivated 3 other things. What are the 3 things they have abandoned? Sensual thoughts, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of harming. These are the 3 things they have abandoned. What are the 3 things they have cultivated? Thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of goodwill, and thoughts of non-harming. These are the 3 things they have cultivated. Not understanding and not penetrating the 4 Noble Truths. Bhikkhus. Just a stick thrown up into the air falls now on its bottom, now on its top. So too as beings roam and wander on, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. Now they go from this world to the other world. Now they come from the other world to this world. For what reason? Because they have not seen the 4 Noble Truths. What for? The Noble Truth of suffering, the Noble Truth of the origin of suffering, the Noble Truth of the cessation of suffering, the Noble Truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Therefore, bhikkhus, an exertion should be made to understand. This is suffering. An exertion should be made to understand. This is the origin of suffering. An exertion should be made to understand. This is the cessation of suffering. An exertion should be made to understand. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Bhikkhus. It is because of not understanding and not penetrating the 4 Noble Truths that you and I have roamed and wandered through this long course of samsara. What for? It is, bhikkhus, because of not understanding and not penetrating the Noble Truth of suffering, the Noble Truth of the origin of suffering, the Noble Truth of the cessation of suffering, the Noble Truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering, that you and I have roamed and wandered through this long course of samsara. That Noble Truth of suffering, bhikkhus, has been understood and penetrated. That Noble Truth of the origin of suffering has been understood and penetrated. That Noble Truth of the cessation of suffering has been understood and penetrated. That noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering has been understood and penetrated. Craving for existence has been cut off. The conduit to existence has been destroyed. Now there is no more renewed existence.